Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Movies, they're pretty good. I'm your host, Travis Dudding, and today we're going to conclude the Christmas series with one of my favorites, not my favorite, to be honest, but one of my favorites. It's the television special Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer from 1964. This is the first of the Rankin Bass Christmas specials, the stop motion animation ones that everybody knows. And I don't know, this has just always been one of my favorites. I love it and I watch it every year, and let's get right into it. Okay. So we start off with a montage of newspaper articles showing that there's a big storm and places are closing and the mail's getting delayed, all that kind of type of stuff. So it's like big storms, big winter storms, everything like that. So then with the title, and then it shows, here comes this little snowman. It's voiced by Burl Ives. He tells you his name is Sam. And then we cut, he gives like a little introduction, and he's like, here's where Santa lives, is in this big castle. And you see Santa in the castle, and he's at the dinner table with Mrs. Claus, and like she's like complaining that he's not eating, which is like a weird thing. Like, I don't know if like what, I guess that it's just for the irony of it to have like Santa just be like a skinny person that never eats, and the wife's like begging him to eat. This is just a runner throughout the whole thing, and it's just like, and she says like, who's ever heard of a skinny Santa? And then it's like, but then Burl Ives, or the snowman, he's like, oh, like, don't worry, Santa will be nice and plump by Christmas Eve. So that means he's on some kind of drastic weight gain regimen, like he's Christian Bale or something, preparing for a role. So he's just like gonna be this like underweight guy, and then all of a sudden be obese by the time Christmas comes. So that's kind of scary, not too healthy. Anyways, so after that introduction, that little like kind of cold open, then Sam's like, oh, like, you never heard of Rudolph? Well, let me tell you. And then he starts singing the song. And so we get that. It just like kind of sings the first verse, and then it just goes into like a melody for the opening credits, like a medley for the opening credits. Sorry, I'm a little out of it. I was just sick the other day, so my brain's not quite working. But so yeah, after the opening credits and the medley and everything, we go to a cave where Rudolph is being born. So he's like brand new, born, comes out. And that like is the first thing they notice, obviously, is that his nose is shiny and red and glowing and everything like that. And then they're like, oh, what's going on with this? Like, what are we going to do about it? And then the mom's like, oh, we'll just cover it up. Like, don't worry about it. And then Santa shows up to the birth. Like, it's like, oh, like, it's just crazy. It's like if you think about it, it's like you're having a baby, and then like 5 minutes later your boss shows up, and it's like, hey, what's going on? Like, can I see the baby? Like, no, like let us like enjoy our new baby for a little bit before you come along. And like immediately he's like super judgmental about the baby, and he's like, just like right off the bat, he's like, oh, like, hey, like, Rudolph better get that nose fixed or he's never going to make the sleigh team. And he just, like, insults their newborn baby, like, right in front of him, like, right after he's born. And then, like, right after that, so yeah, just insults them, and then is, like, just breaks into song singing, jingle, jingle, jingle. Yeah. And then he's, like, finishes his song and gets out of there. And the dad's like, okay, like, we got to cover the nose. We'll put, like, a little like cap on it and stuff like that. The dad's Donner, by the way, so he's one of like he's one of Santa's big team. He's one of his guys. So, and then also we get this our first warning about the abominable snowman, and then all we hear is like a roar, and then we kind of like see him a little bit, like I think he like peeks over a mountain or something like that, but he'll come into play a little bit later. So now we cut to the elves. They're in the workshop. They're putting together the generic toys that you always see being built in every single Christmas special cartoon movie and stuff like that. They're like rarely are they making things that like kids are actually buying, But so they're building their like wood trains and teddy bears and everything like that. And here comes the boss elf, I guess, and he's in there like, hey, like, what's the hold up? And they're like, oh, like Hermie over there, he's not pulling his weight, and he gets all pissed at him, and he's going over there like, Hermie, and he's like, oh, like, what's the hold up? And he's like, well, I don't want to make toys, like, I'm not happy with my job. And he's like, well, what is it you do want to do? Like, and he says, I want to be a dentist. So then like it's like, oh yeah, I want to be a dentist. And then like all like the other elves, like everything he says, like they just start like whispering to each other like a bunch of gossipy little bitches. And there's like, Hermie doesn't like to make toys. And then so after like he's like mistreated by his coworkers and his boss, then they all leave and he has to stay and work extra hours to finish his quota and everything like that. And then he just starts breaking into song, like you do in this. And he's singing the song, the Why Am I Such a Misfit? And so now we cut, I guess it's like a little bit later, and Rudolph's like a little bit older now, and he like rapidly ages. Yeah, he is a animal, but at the same time, he grows up pretty fast in this. So he's there, he's getting bullied by his dad, he's making him wear a fake nose and stuff like that. And he's just like, yeah, that's all it is. It's like his dad's just like bullying him, got the fake nose, and then after that whole interaction, then Rudolph is singing his own like part of the Why Am I Such a Misfit song. So now it's like it's time for the team tryouts and everything. And he's got his fake nose on. He's making friends with some like redheaded reindeer named Fireball. And so he's there at the practice, and we just see him interacting with them, and he's like making friends pretty quick and everything too, which is good. Not such of a misfit, but then, that's not going to last long. So we cut over to elf practice, which it apparently is just singing, even though like the thing we know about elves is like they make toys, but elf practice in this universe is just singing a song to Santa that he doesn't want to listen to. And that's what we're seeing is like they're singing the song We Are Santa's Elves. Santa's bored, he doesn't give an F, and he's just sitting there, and the song's not going well, and he's like, yeah, that's great, whatever, like, it needs a little work, though. And so he walks out of there, and so now the elf boss is all, like, mad again. He's like, okay, like, what's the deal? And they're like, oh, it's because Hermie didn't show up, and then he's pissed off again. He's like, oh, I've had it with this guy. And he busts into the workshop where Hermie is, and he's like, why weren't you at elf practice? Which I think was a meme for a little bit. I don't know how long that lasted or how like much reach that had, but I remember seeing it and thinking it was hilarious. So he's in there, and he's like, okay, like, what are you doing? You weren't at elf practice. And he's like, oh, I'm just fixing the teeth on these dolls. And he's like, why do, like, we have dolls that like eat, we have dolls that sleep, we have dolls that cry, like, we don't need like chewing dolls, like, they don't need teeth, so like you're wasting your time. And he just like yells at him for a little bit, and then tells him that he'll never fit in. And Hermie's like, yeah, you know what, you're right, and just leaves out the window. But it's like, I don't think he needed to do that. Like, he could have just walked out the front door. It's not like you got to stay here or anything like that. He didn't get like locked in, and so, but yeah, he escapes out the window. And now we cut back to the team tryouts for the reindeer. We see the coach. It's Comet, another one of the main reindeer. He's got a like baseball cap and a whistle and everything, which I don't know how he like picks up the whistle. Maybe I'd like missed that. But anyways, so he just looks like a coach, and he's got like the, like, I don't know who does the voice, but they're like maybe trying to sound like Jimmy Stewart, because that's the type of voice that it is. And that's like the first lesson is like learning how to fly. And so also while he's there, Fireball makes mention like, oh, there's girls watching, or does, because they're deer. Doe a deer, female deer. And so he's like going to talk to one who's like kind of like making eyes at him, and she tells him like, hey, like why are you like talking funny? And he's like, what's the matter with the way that I talk? And it's just because he has his like nose plugged. And she's like, oh, but that's okay, I like you, and I think you're cute. Like, she whispers that to him, like, I think you're cute. And then he's like, woo, she thinks I'm cute. And then he starts flying like perfectly. Everyone else is struggling and everything. This definitely got like a little ripped off when the first Harry Potter, when everyone's like struggling to hold the broom and Harry does it like right off the bat. It kind of reminded me of that. But as he's like flying around, Santa walks up and he's super impressed by it, and he's like, oh man, like he's good. And then, but as he's like celebrating and stuff, then his fake nose falls off, and everyone's like freaks out about it. Everyone like cartoonish like eyes bulging out like burn, and yeah, and then they just start bullying him and everything, basically just the like demonstrating the song, like we're not gonna let him play any reindeer games and stuff like that. And this is messed up because Santa just walks up to Donner, his dad, is like, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like, what the hell? Like, calm down, Santa. Like, it's just like, I don't know. That's just so extreme. Santa's like such a dick in this, like throughout the whole thing. Like, he's barely nice in the whole thing. They kind of fix that in later Rankin Bass specials. Like, Santa is actually like what we think of Santa, but for whatever reason in this first one and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, they're like, no, like this guy, like let's make him the worst person. So of course, like you would think, Rudolph runs away from the crowd and everything, but Clarice follows him, and he's like, no, like why would you want to be with me? Like, I have this dumb glowing nose. And she's like, I like your nose. And then they start singing a song called There's Always Tomorrow. Just like, hey, like, keep your head up. Like, it's fine. Like, maybe they'll like you tomorrow or something like that. Then Clarice's dad shows up, and he's doing that, like, typical, like, racist dad. Like, no, like, my daughter would never go out with someone like you. Come on. Like, don't even associate with her. He's just got a thing against red-nosed people, I guess. Red-nosed deer, I guess. So then while Rudolph's standing there all sad, Hermie just like pops out of a pile of snow, like, and without any explanation of what he's been doing there and why he like didn't get frostbite or hypothermia or anything like that. And he pops out. They're like immediately friends. They're like, hey, who are you? Oh, I'm this, and I'm running away because of this. Like, oh, I'm Hermie, and I'm running away because of this. So immediate friendship. They start singing the Misfit song together. The one that they made up on their own separately, but it sounds exactly the same. And then they take off together. They're like, all right, let's run away together. And they're walking, and then it starts like getting a little windy and everything like that. And they're like, oh, like maybe I should hide my nose because the abominable snowman. And so they're like, yeah, that's a good idea, but it's like, we don't have time to worry about that. But then they take off running because they can hear like the roaring, and they run into this like canyon. But this is where they meet Yukon Cornelius, and he's like this like prospector guy who with a big beard and everything, and he's like out there looking for gold and silver and gold. And so after his introduction, then Sam's like, oh, like, by the way, I'm going to sing this song called Silver and Gold. And so he breaks into that Christmas song. And after that, then we cut back to our friends, Hermie, Rudolph, and Yukon. And he's been being pulled by sled dogs, but they're not like actual sled dogs. They're like dachshunds and corgis and stuff like that. They're all like little dogs and pulling this like big ass head guy around in the snow. And of course they're like, he's like, all right, let's go. And gets on the sled, and then they're not gonna pull it. And he's like, fine, I'll show you how. And so he ends up pulling the dogs and everybody on the sled. But then they like get to the water, and then here's the abominable snowman. And as Yukon refers to him, the Bumble, and that's how I'm going to refer to him for the rest of the episode. So the Bumble's there. He's like he's about to get them, and then they have to like break off a piece of ice that they're standing on, and so they like ride this ice break across the water, and they're like, and he's like, that's going to be fine because Bumbles can't swim, and so they get away safely on the little ice break. We cut back to the cave. Donner, he feels bad, and he's like gonna go out to find Rudolph. And then like 5 minutes later, apparently, the mom and Clarice go off on their own to go find Rudolph. So they're floating there in the thing, and then they crash into land and everything. They seem to be on some kind of island, and they look up and they see a griffin flying across, like a half lion, half bird, I guess. I think that's a griffin. I could be wrong on that. Anyways, so they see that, and they're like, this is crazy. And then a Jack in the Box, like, pops out and asks, like, who they are. And they're like, these are our names. And he's like, they're like, what's your name? Let me guess, Jack. And he says, no, Charlie. So, and he says, I'm a misfit toy. And like, what kid wants to play with a Charlie in the box? And then here's where we get the song about the misfit toys. And so they're singing and everything, and then they introduce like all the weird toys and everything. So you got a spotted elephant, which I think that's pretty normal. A train with square wheels on its caboose, a water pistol that shoots jelly, a bird that swims instead of flies, a boat that sinks, a cowboy that rides an ostrich instead of a horse, and yeah, that's about it. So they're just like toys that are just a little off, I guess, and they all live on this island like alone with each other, and aren't going to get taken to kids or anything like that. So they're like, we want to stay here too because we're misfits. And they're like, you got to go talk to the king, King Moonraiser. And they're like, where's he? And he's like, he lives up in that castle. Like, let's go. Like, we'll take you up to him. So they go and talk to him, and he does have that. I mentioned it in the other episode, but he talks exactly like the sex cult leader guy from Eyes Wide Shut. Like the voice sounds exactly the same to me. So he's there, and he's like saying that they can't stay, but they should, like, they could stay like one night, but they can't live there, and that they should go talk to Santa and find homes for these homeless toys. So they get to their little tiny house that they're staying the night in. They're like all in one bed, and so they're going to sleep, and they're making the plan saying that like, we're going to go talk to Santa tomorrow. Rudolph's hesitant. And he's like saying, no, my nose is going to put us in danger. I need to go by myself. But they're like, no, like, we got to stick together. But as soon as they all fall asleep, Rudolph goes out on his own because he just doesn't want to put his friends in danger. So he's sneaking out, and like basically in the next scene he's grown up, and he's like, he grew up on the way home. So that's the other thing I'm talking about with the rapid aging, and he's like a teen now, I guess. And he makes it all the way back, but then realizes that everyone's gone and they went out looking for him. So then he's got to go back the other way. And then it's another storm. Storm's starting to come and blow the shingles off the houses and Christmas Town and everything. And then we cut back to Rudolph, and he's found the cave where the Bumble lives, and he's got Donner and the mom and Clarice are all there, like getting harassed by the Bumble. He's like got him cornered, but like I don't know what he's like, if he's gonna eat them or if he's just been like messing with them for like a month. I don't know, but then he like finally does like pick up Clarice and he's about to eat her, and then here comes Rudolph and he's like, oh, like, hey, don't do that. And then the Bumble just like picks up a 2-ton stalactite and throws it at Rudolph and like crushes him basically. But all he does is like his eyes like spin around and he's like a little passed out for like 2 seconds. And then, but that's like enough for him to like be like disabled for a sec and be trapped and everything. So Bumble's got the upper hand again, but here come Yukon and Hermie, and they start making a plan. So they make a plan where Hermie has to act like a pig to lure the Bumble out of the cave, and as he comes out, then Yukon drops a giant rock on his head that just like bonks him on the head. And after he passes out, then Hermie puts his dental skills to the test and takes out all of his teeth. So then Bumble like wakes up, realizes that his teeth are gone, and he's like freaking out, and they're all laughing at him. Then like Yukon's like walking towards him, like I don't know what his plan is or like why he's doing this, but it's like waving his arms at him, like taunting him. But then they like both fall off a cliff together, and they all think that Yukon's dead, and they're like, well, we don't have time to worry about that, so let's go back home. And so they get back, and like, oh, like everyone's safe and everything, and the elf boss feels bad. He's like, okay, like fine, like you could open a dentist office and everything, like I'll let you do that. Which that's also like funny because this guy has not been to any sort of dental school or anything like that, and then he just gets to open a practice like after doing one extraction on on the Bumble, and that's it. So they're starting to talk about how, oh, never mind. So then they're like, oh, like we lost our friend, but then there's a big knock on the door, and here comes the Bumble through the door with Yukon, and so he's alive. And he's like, oh, how'd you survive? And he's like, oh, didn't I tell you? Bumbles bounce. So he survived, basically like bounced off the bottom of the crevasse, apparently. And then they just went back to Santa's castle. And they're like, oh, like he wants to, like he's reformed now and he wants a job. So the Bumble puts the star on top of the tree because it's like really high and he's tall and everything, and everyone's like happy. But then Santa's like, oh, I got bad news. We got to cancel Christmas because the weather's so bad. Like it's too foggy. I can't see. We'd be flying blind, and there's just no way to do it safely. And then they're like, and then Rudolph's nose starts shining, and he's like, Rudolph, your nose so bright. Won't you shine my sleigh tonight? And then you know how the song goes. So that whole thing happens. Like, OMG, your nose is so bright. Like, be my best friend. I'm sorry I bullied you before. And I was like, all right, I guess we could do it. So, but then Rudolph tells him, it's like, okay, I'll do it, but you got to go pick up these homeless toys on this island. And Santa agrees. He's like, all right, like you saved Christmas, so whatever you want. So they go, they pick up the Misfit toys. They're all excited. They get in the sleigh. They jump in. And then out over the end credits, we see the Misfit toys getting delivered, and everyone lives happily ever after. So Yeah, really liked the special. Would watch it on TV all the time every year when it came on. Now I have it on Blu-ray. Had it on DVD for a while too. Probably even VHS. I'm pretty sure every like medium I've owned this on. Love it. It's silly. It's goofy. Love the songs. A lot of them are just, most of them aren't original songs, so they're just like worked in like a jukebox musical type thing. And but yeah, it's just it holds a special place in my heart. Really wanted to start off with this one. My fiance wanted me to do this one because she's in dental school and she identifies with the Hermie, the dentist character. So just really like this one, and love Burl Ives. Like, he's such a good singer too. Like, he just has like the best, like warmest voice. So like listening to him narrate and sing, love that about it. Just love the absurdity, love the like, I mean, good for the time, but now the like low quality stop motion animation just looks so like rigid and like it's hard to explain it, but if you know, you know. And so that, yeah, that's it. That's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I'm planning on like, depending on how long the podcast goes, like do at least one of these Christmas specials each year. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying the feedback that I'm getting. I hope you continue to listen. I hope you remember to rate and review the podcast wherever you are listening. Apple Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever, okay? But yeah, I hope you keep listening. Remember to follow me on all the social media links. Those can all be found on the website, and also the Instagram is probably the place where I'm the most active for feedback and everything like that. So again, thank you so much. I hope everyone has a happy holiday, whether it's Christmas, which is what I celebrate, Hanukkah, whatever. If you're not celebrating anything, I hope everyone is staying safe, staying happy, and reaching out to people if they don't have anybody. Like, just, if you think you don't have anybody, you do have someone. And just stay happy, stay safe, and Merry Christmas. Thanks. Bye.